Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Sunday chat. I'm so excited to have all of you with me who are currently joining and those who will be tuning in to our replay. Today, we are going to be talking all about mental health, and I hope that you are as excited as I am. I have two amazing guests today from the Adulthood Loading podcast, who are both professional psychologists who will be telling us a bit about mental health. But before we get them on, I just want to say thank you to everyone who has been supporting the Sunday chat so far. And for those who will be supporting in the future, please feel free to share the live. Please feel free to like the video after it has been posted to my Instagram feed, comment, and please ensure that you are telling your friends about the Instagram live so that we can get more people interested as we survive and thrive in our 20s. So my guests this evening are Emma and Marissa from the Adulthood Loading podcast. Now, recently I've been following different Instagram pages that are similar to my niche who talk about adulthood and just adulting in general. And I came across the Adulthood Loading podcast, and I noticed that their podcast is a bit similar to my Instagram live in that they provide tips and tools for surviving your 20s and just adulthood in general. But they also offer mental health tips. And I believe this is so important, especially in society today. We're all still dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, and we've all had to deal with various emotions, and sometimes we may not know exactly how to fully deal with these emotions. So this evening we have Emma and Marissa from the Adulthood Loading podcast, who are both professional psychologists who will be telling us a bit about dealing with our mental health in today's society. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Emma and Marissa on to our Instagram live. Them to join. Please feel free to tell me how your Sunday is going so far. I hope you've had a restful Sunday. And if it wasn't restful, I hope it was productive. Hi, Marissa. How are you?
Hi. I'm good.
So nice to have
Hey, everybody. Excited to be here.
And I'm so excited to have you all. How is Sunday so far?
I think it's been pretty good. What about you, Marissa?
Pretty chill, pretty relaxed, trying to enjoy the day.
That's good to hear. So obviously we're going to be talking a bit about mental health. But before we get to that, can you both tell us a bit about yourselves and what inspired you to start the Adulthood Loading podcast?
That's a good question. So my name is Marissa Stubbs. I am from the Bahamas, Grand Bahama specifically, and my background is in clinical psychology. My passion and my interest is just to promote wellness across the lifespan and just thinking through how we can leverage technology to promote wellness and just manage your mental health. And so I work in private practice. I also work in mental health research, conducting mental health research and things like that. And I don't know, I'm going to let Emma tell a little bit about our story. But it all started when we were in Jamaica, essentially, and we both were in the clinical psych program. We met, developed a friendship, and then things just took off from there.
Yeah. Hey, Emma.
Okay. Yeah, so our background is really similar. I am also Bahamian, but I am from Nassau, so New Providence, but I'm currently in Trinidad. So for me, helping others has just always been something that kind of like came naturally. And it's just something that I always wanted to do, and just help others to just live life to their best potential and to be their authentic self. So to do so whilst just being themselves and knowing that they are enough, they are amazing just being themselves, and they can do everything that they want to while just being themselves. I also work in private practice, and of course, as you would know, we have the Adulthood Loading podcast where we have free mental health resources and episodes that is specifically targeted for young adults, but can help people across the developmental span. And, we do it in a way that's kind of fun and humorous because, traditional mental health resources, it can be maybe text heavy sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to say, sometimes it can seem a bit boring, and that's not really engaging for us. So we wanted to give everybody something that they're excited to listen to, excited to watch, and they just get a lot of, real life and useful everyday information as well.
Amazing. I just want to commend both of you for the amazing work that you're doing with your podcast. And I also love the fact that you speak about like recent issues and shows and stuff as well. Because I both had a podcast on talking about the Tinder swindler. Because you know that's the hot topic when the show first came out on Netflix.
Yeah.
To take time out to dissect stuff such as that, I think it's just awesome and entertaining. It's like I love the vibe that you give when you really talk about mental health. So I just want to commend both of you and tell you to keep up the work.
Thank you.
And I think, sorry, I just wanted to say thank you as well for doing everything that you're doing, even hosting this episode right now. I'm sure it matters and means a lot to a lot of people, including us. So thank you so much, and thank you for inviting us as well.
Thank you both for agreeing to be on. So let's jump right in. So the first question is, I guess, the overarching theme for this evening, and it's just, what is mental health and why is it so important for us to take care of our mental health?
Okay. Marissa, do you want me to get that one?
You could go ahead and I'll jump in afterwards.
Sure. Okay, so I think when we think about mental health, it's important to recognize that this is not, the absence of having a psychological disorder like depression and so on. Mental health is basically our emotional, psychological, and social well-being and functioning. And just having this understanding also lets people know that, even if I'm diagnosed with a neurodevelopment or just neurodevelopmental disorder like ADHD, for example, or just like a long-term diagnosis like bipolar disorder as well, I know that I can still have good mental health once this is being managed and I'm getting the help that's out there. And I think just knowing that as well is important, so then we don't feel so shameful when our mental health is not at its best. And it's so important because it affects everything we do, how we feel, how we think, how we act. And so it affects our relationship with ourselves, our relationships with our romantic partners, our family members, our loved ones. And, it affects how we even manage stress as well. So it's so important to know that at every stage of the lifespan. So as an adult, as a child, as a teenager, and so on.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think when it comes to mental health, a lot of times persons don't realize it's an ongoing thing. When we come to managing it, when it comes to, making sure that we're feeling well, or if it is that we're not feeling as well, it's not a state of, I'm here, I have good mental health, and this is just it, I've reached. No, mental health is a journey. And it's important to also see like how holistic it should be. There's a reason why Emma mentioned our emotional, our spiritual, our social, our physical health, right? A lot of times people feel like, well, I don't have any bruises, or, I'm not feeling any physical pain, so I'm all right. It's a little bit of stress I could manage, right? But that's not necessarily the case. Mental health can impact us in numerous ways. It could impact us holistically. And I think that's why it's so important that we take the time out to recognize when it is that we need to give a little bit more attention to our mental health. And I love that Emma noted that, it's not necessarily the presence of a mental health challenge when we speak about mental health. Yes, there are things that happen sometimes and you can meet the criteria to get a mental health diagnosis, but we also need to be aware of the things that we need to do to promote mental wellness, right? So it's not, people like to talk about mental illness, but we need to understand what we need to understand better what's involved with mental wellness and kind of incorporating certain strategies and tools to maintain our well-being, because it's about quality of life. Right? And we want to make sure that while we're here and while we're going through adulthood and while we're managing all these changes, that we're enjoying our life and we feel happy to be here and we're being present and in the moment.
I love both of your responses, because a lot of times we do associate mental health with having a specific illness, you know. So, and also what you said, Marissa, in terms of, for example, we don't have any bruises, so we're fine. Like, we only care about our physical health. And lots of times we tend to neglect our mental well-being. And I love how you mentioned the fact that we should take it as a holistic approach and realize that it's a journey. And this is a journey that we should love, and we should be taking care of ourselves. Now, when we look at taking care of ourselves, you know, we are in a society today that's all about boss. You know, you have to be booked and busy. You always have to be working and doing this and doing that to really prove that you are successful, right? So there are lots of times where, as young people, we don't really have that work-life balance. And I posted that people could ask questions for you both. And one of the questions were, how do you get a work-life balance? So before you get to that, is there a such thing as a work-life balance? Because it's like, sometimes you tend to neglect one area of your life while trying to ensure that the other area is thriving. So can we really have this work-life balance and make sure that we're actually taking care of ourselves?
Ooh, they were definitely on point with our question. And it's funny, it's interesting because we literally have an episode that speaks about that. Like Emma and I discussed, you know, does this really exist? Because we always hear about it, but when it comes to actually implementing it, it doesn't quite always feel that way. And so, you know, when we think about work-life balance, it's all about just how are you managing? How are you managing your personal time and how are you managing your work time? And I think in the age of the pandemic, this has become even more of a significant topic, because when you see issues such as working from home, it kind of blended things a bit more. So before you had the 9 to 5, you were in the office. And even though, you know, sometimes you take work home and things like that, or sometimes things would spill over, it's a little bit easier, I think, then. Now it's become even harder because sometimes the workspace and the rest space and the relaxation space is intertwined, you know. And I think when we speak about work-life balance, the real meat of the matter is, are you burnt out, right? Because is it that all of your tasks are being completed within a certain amount of time, or is it that you're trying to finish and complete so many things that is now spilling over into other aspects of your life? And of course, this isn't just on you as a worker. This also speaks to your work environment, to your managers, things of that nature. You know, what type of environment are you in? Is it a toxic work environment? And so when we think about work-life balance, I guess it's a matter of what would that mean for you? What would that look like for you? Because not all of us work 9 to 5. Not all of us work in traditional jobs like settings and things like that, but it's more so, are you maintaining and meeting your needs in both your personal life and in both your work life? What do you think, Emma?
Oh, I absolutely agree. And I'm right here trying to put the link down in the chat for everybody. So the episode is called Work-Life Balance. Does it exist? So I definitely agree with everything Marissa says. I think that when we think about work-life balance, it's so easy to say it doesn't exist because sometimes we think it has to be this rigid thing. So every day I will have this amount of time for this and this amount of time for that and this amount of time for myself every day. That's unrealistic. And then, you know, it only makes us feel worse when we set these unrealistic expectations for ourselves that we know, well, maybe we don't realize in a moment, but we can't meet them. So we feel ashamed, we feel bad about ourselves. And the thing is, work-life balance is flexible, or it would be helpful for it to be more flexible. So the reality is maybe sometimes you have a task that you need to get done sooner. So you're not going to have all of that time that you might want for maybe for your family, for yourself that day, for example. So you might be putting in more work, more time to do the work, but it's what you do after. So after you do that, are you setting back the balance again? Are you doing something for yourself and not going to be doing something with others? If that's what's something that, you know, makes you feel more joy, makes you feel more recharged. Is there balance there? Are you focusing too much on just chilling and now you're stressed out because the work is just not getting done. And sometimes that happens. We've all been there, right?
Yes.
I'm not going to say we haven't all been there, but it's just all about, it's in the definition, balance. And that doesn't mean, 3 hours here, 3 hours there, 3 hours there. It's just being more flexible with it. But there are some key ways that you can, I don't want to say achieve, because you shouldn't look at it as an achievement, right? It's more like a cycle. So it's not just something that we attain one time. We're continuously working on it, giving continuous effort and being flexible. But there are 3 things that you can do that will help you to maintain this elusive work-life balance, or make it less elusive. So one thing that me and Marissa always talk about is the power of just pausing. It's so easy for us to keep going and like maybe panic about it, and then we don't know what to do. But if you just take a minute and pause and reflect, it can actually do a world of difference. So in that pause, you can ask yourself, what is currently causing me stress right now, or a feeling of imbalance or dissatisfaction? And when you figure out what those things are, or maybe focus on one at a time, how is this affecting my functioning at work? How is it affecting my personal life? How is it affecting my ability to be present in my personal life versus me trying to watch Bridgerton and I'm here panicking about whatever work I think I need to do right now in this moment that is so urgent for some reason. And then, when you're thinking about how it's affecting your life, sometimes it's helpful to look at, so what am I sacrificing now? If I want to spend more time doing work, what am I sacrificing in my personal life? The economists would call this, the opportunity cost, right? The next best thing forgone. What am I sacrificing now if I want to do this thing? Am I okay with that? So the next thing you do is even like notice your emotions. So now that you're aware of your current situation and what you're sacrificing or what's causing you stress, like how does that even make you feel? Like it's so easy for us to just not keep our emotions out of everything, especially when we weren't taught the value of addressing your emotions and even just acknowledging them. Like, do I feel fulfilled putting in all this work? Okay, yeah, I might think this is how I'm supposed to be. This will lead to me being successful. But do I feel that way? Do I feel fulfilled or satisfied with this? Am I actually finding that, wait a minute, I feel more dissatisfied putting in more work here? Do I feel resentful or frustrated or sad? Do I feel nothing? Do I feel apathetic? So noticing how you feel about a situation will really help you to realize what changes you want to make in your work life and in your personal life. And then you just put that all together and you reprioritize. Okay, I'm not happy with this. I'm not satisfied with this. Maybe if I even switched it up just a little bit. See, little changes make the world a difference. Like maybe if I just devote a little bit more time to myself in the morning, a little bit more time to, focusing on myself as I'm in the shower, I come out, let me, take care of myself, put some lotion on, just putting on my diffuser. This is really helping me throughout the day. And, it's different for everybody, but that's what I would say.
That is so good. Oh, wow. Those tips. Wow. So obviously you first mentioned pausing and reflecting and then noticing your emotions, how they made you feel, and then trying to figure out whether you need to reprioritize. I've never really looked at having practical tips and steps to really trying to figure out how to get work-life balance. So that right there, I think after this live, I'm actually going to go back and look at these 3 steps and actually try to implement them because that's helpful. And I also love the fact that both of you said that you should be flexible with it. Because, when we think about work-life balance, I think this has to be such a rigid thing where we have to devote a particular amount of time every single day to a particular task. But the fact that you both are mentioning that you should be flexible with it is kind of like taking off a little bit of pressure. It's like, okay, you got to be flexible, be calm, and, take it one day at a time with yourself. So Thank you both so much. And if you notice that I pinned the comment where Emma mentioned a podcast where they spoke about work-life balance. So if you want more tips on that, shameless plug, check out the Loading podcast for that episode. I think that we should end the live right there because it's so good. But obviously we have more questions to go through. But I don't know. I just feel like the way that you just broke that down into those manageable steps. I think it was amazing. But just moving on and switching gears a bit, when we think about young people, I know a lot of people think that a lot of young people are currently going through depression and anxiety, but they're not telling anyone about it. They're suffering in silence. So my next question is, what are some common mental health issues that you both have realized that a lot of young people are currently dealing with? And especially when we think about coming out of the pandemic, well, still technically in the pandemic, but dealing with all of those ranges of emotions, what sort of issues have you both been noticing that young people are dealing with today?
Yeah, so I think the key here is to first, let's think about what are the realities of being a young adult, right? Because in psychology, we like to look at the developmental periods and what's going on at that time, because it's all about how you're responding to your environment and how you are reacting to meeting the needs, or basically what your environment is requiring of you at the time. When you look at adulthood, and what's so unique about it is this is like the only time frame where we are going through so much change, right? We are leaving the home, leaving our like primary guardian figures, where some of us are going to different countries, some of us are pursuing higher education, some of us are entering the workforce, some of us are becoming parents, getting married. It's so much change. It's so much expectations. And like you even mentioned before, it's so much pressure, right? And not all the time our childhoods have prepared us for that pressure and for all that change and for all that adjustment. And so naturally, just off the bat, being a young adult makes you very vulnerable to developing certain mental health conditions, right? And so when we even think about mental health challenge, not every time that you have challenges with your mental health, it necessarily equates to you meeting the diagnostic criteria for a mental health disorder. But of course, that doesn't make the challenges any less real. And so when you look and see that already as a young adult, we have all these challenges to navigate. And then on top of that, you have poverty. On top of that, you have, you have maybe health issues. On top of that, you also may have a crisis, a natural disaster. We experienced Dorian, right? And then we had to deal with the pandemic. And all of those things, it's like change on top of change, on top of change, on top of change.
You can't catch a break at this point.
You can't catch a break. And so naturally, if you didn't kind of get that supportive environment that you may be required to kind of equip you to make you feel comfortable to react to that change, and you don't have the strategies and the tools and the coping mechanisms to help you adjust, then you're likely to develop mental health challenges. And for young adults, there's a top two that everyone knows. It's depression and anxiety. Like, I know people feel like we're always talking about depression and anxiety, but it's very relevant. And I think, and I know maybe, for the general public, they don't recognize that there's different levels, right? Not all depression, well, we have different terms, diagnostic terms for depression. It could show up in different ways and in different forms. But for the most part, when we speak of anxiety and depression, it's different ranges. It ranges from mild to severe. And everyone kind of experiences different levels of these feelings at different points based on, what's on your plate and what you have to carry. And I think the important thing is to recognize, because we're vulnerable, because we're managing these changes, we should be more sensitive. We have an image of what mental health looks like, or if you're mentally unwell, what that looks like. And we feel like just because we're getting up every day and we're going through it, we're managing fine. And that's not necessarily the case all the time. So I think recognizing that young adulthood is hard. There's a reason why we came up with this term adulting, right? It's the reason why we came up with the term, because it's hard out here in these streets. Figuring out how to pay bills, trying to find a job, thinking through how I'm going to get to the money, all the pressure, your parents, you know, they want you to be successful. It's a lot of pressures on us. And I think just recognizing that we're vulnerable to those things is very important. And so just to give you an overview, so anxiety is pretty much almost a fear of what's to come, of what's in the future, right? It's this concern about what's coming up next. A lot of times people feel like anxiety is something we should be rid of and we shouldn't have at all. But anxiety is a natural part of the human experience, right? It tells us that something is wrong. It tells us, it gives us that, you know, the fight or flight experience. It gives us that type of signal to something going on in our environment, right? However, like I said before, there's different levels. And so as you move across the spectrum, it's monitoring when it gets to the point that it's preventing you from operating in your environment. And that's when mental health disorders move into the part where you need to seek professional help and talk to someone. And even with depression is characterized by a low mood, by sadness, right? But when you get to the point about, you know, it's hard for me to get out of bed, or I've been feeling this way for 2 years, I've been feeling down, I feel empty. You know, those are the type of signals. Again, it's stopping you from going to work. It's stopping you from going out, operating with friends. When you look at a mental health disorder or a mental health challenge, it's when you're not operating in your environment the way you should. So the challenges that you're having now is preventing you. It's impacting your quality of life, like I mentioned before. And that's when you need to talk to someone and you need to reach out and things of that nature.
And I think it's important how you gave that definition of anxiety too. I remember the first time that I ever like felt anxious per se was when I had my first law school exam, and I was sitting at the desk about to sit this exam, and then my heart started racing, and then like I couldn't move. I never felt this way ever until that first law school exam. I just was like
a deer in headlights, just like
yes. And like after like 5 minutes or so, I was able to like snap out of it and actually like write. But that first exam, I was just, and like you said, fear of like the future and like what may happen and just that whole mood. That was the first time I really felt that whole anxious vibe. And I was traumatized after that. I'm like, I've never felt this way before. Like, what's going on with me? Do I have a problem? And I love the fact that you mentioned that there are different levels to it, because just because you may have had an issue before, that doesn't mean that you're like on the high spectrum state where you would need to, I guess, seek medical attention and medical advice. So I appreciate the fact that you're really like talking about the fact that there are different levels of each mental health disorder. And Emma, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Oh, sure. Okay. I think I was about to say something and then I forgot when you were talking about your story about how, you know, you felt your anxiety like that. I think this is why these conversations are so important, so people don't feel like, you know, there's something wrong with me, I can't tell anyone. And for me, I even remember I didn't know I was experiencing anxiety when I was experiencing it when I was a child, when I was an adolescent. I didn't know that's why I did certain things a certain way to naturally just to try to cope with my anxiety, but I didn't know what it was. I thought that was just, you know, that's just me. And maybe everybody deals with this. I don't know, at least at the time. And I even remember like later on, like even at the university level, someone telling me, you know, Emma, this is anxiety. And instantly I was like, how dare you? Anxiety? Like, how could you even say that to me? Like, this is so insulting. And that's why it's so important to talk about this and the mental health stigma and address that it's very real. These are very human experiences, and everybody experiences anxiety at one point or another. We're not saying everybody experiences anxiety disorders, but everybody experiences it. And just because you have a mental health disorder, it does not lower your worth in any way, no matter what anyone has told you or what you've even been telling yourself, because the reality is that sometimes we're not kind to ourselves about these things. I would say some other very common disorders or mental health challenges among young adults is like disordered eating. So disordered eating eating disorders. So the most common are like bulimia and anorexia nervosa. So like bulimia, for those who don't know, it might be like excessively consuming food and drinks and then removing it later through vomiting or using, what are those things called? Like laxatives, right? And then anorexia. And yeah, anorexia might be more, so you could understand it, it's more so associated with being very restrictive with what you're eating and not removing the food later, maybe even excessively exercising. And this is so common with like diet culture, you know, the influence of social media and just challenges with your body image as well. Like when you're experiencing bullying, when you have criticism from those closest to you, so your parents, your siblings, your friends, and so on, like this can really increase your vulnerability to experience these disorders. And let's be real, because of the pandemic as well, we're exposed to so much social media at a greater level right now. Like we're on our phones a lot more. And then another one I would say is ADHD. So a lot of people have undiagnosed ADHD and they might be asking themselves like, why do I feel like this? I don't feel like other people. I feel isolated. And basically it's just, it's a neurodevelopmental disorder. So something that you have from like birth, like very young. And it's characterized by hyperactivity or impulsivity, inattention, or both of those things. So, and it affects your environment, your functioning in at least two environments. So how you interact with your friends, how you do your work, how you operate at home. Like when you think about inattention, it's like, you know, my parents told me to do these chores 4 or 5 times just now, and I keep forgetting. I might be making careless mistakes. I forget to write commas, periods. I forget to, I can't find my keys, ever. You know, impulsivity and hyperactivity could be like, you know, feeling like you have so much energy inside you, excessively talking, and even like just acting without thinking. So you don't really know why you did something, but you just do it anyway. And of course, that can be really challenging as well. And then I think 2 others that I think is just important to mention, because sometimes we normalize this, especially as a young adult or late adolescent, substance abuse. So excessively drinking, smoking, using drugs. And this is not to shame anybody at all, because oftentimes when we're doing this, we're trying to cope with something. We're trying to help ourselves in a way that we know in the moment that is not necessarily helpful for us. Well, it might be helpful in the short term, like very short term, but it's really harmful to us as well. And, you know, it's important to address that, you know, yes, we've been experiencing the pandemic for 2 years, and you would think we have adjusted to this and so on, but this is actually the period where people have been experiencing the most difficulty based on research, because we're not supposed to be experiencing such uncertainty for such a long period of time. We're not supposed to be basically in that fight, flight, or freeze response for so long. That's only supposed to be happening for a short amount of time. So now we just have this buildup of stress, and it's no wonder why maybe sometimes we find that we're stuck and we can't do anything, or we're always doing something, or we're always so agitated, and so on. And then another important thing is a very common thing, we had a live on this, that is not always spoken about. So suicide and self-harm. Sometimes I think it's like difficult to talk about these topics because we've labeled them as taboo, but if we don't have them, the people who are struggling with these challenges don't feel like they could come out and talk about it. And chances are, a lot of people, you know, or even yourself, you've experiencing a form of suicidal thoughts. So thinking, oh, you know, it'd just be better if I just disappeared right now. Or it would just be, things would be so much better without me here. And it's not necessarily always with you having a plan in mind. It's also can start with those minor thoughts that we don't realize, like, okay, our thinking right now is not portraying us in an accurate lens. So that's what I would say.
So you offered quite a bit of different mental health issues that people in their young adult years may be experiencing. And I just want to stick with the suicidal thoughts one for a bit. If you are someone who may be having suicidal thoughts, maybe even just that little thought that just creeps into your mind and it disappears, like you said, you probably didn't have a plan. What advice would you give for that person right now?
I'd say the biggest thing is probably to reach out to someone who is close to you, someone that you trust, and share with them how you've been feeling. You know, one of the biggest things that we touched on in the live is a lot of people feel like when people make that decision or when people decide, you know, to end their life, that they're doing it like it's a well-informed decision. They're in their good state of mind. It's like, this is what I want to do, right? When really they are just very overwhelmed. They're experiencing a lot of emotion. It's almost like, you know, a full cup, and they feel like they can't take any more. And talking to someone really makes all of the difference in that moment. Talking to someone you trust. And I know sometimes people are in situations where they might not be around people that they trust or people that they feel that they could disclose that information to. But I'd say reach out to maybe a psych association, or if there's a mental health hotline, because you just want to be able to talk about it. You want to get those feelings out. You want to bring yourself back down so that you can get to the point where you get professional help and you are more conscious of what other options are present and available to you. But the thing about when you're feeling those feelings is it could be really isolating, because like Emma said, the stigma, you know, and a lot of times, even if you are the person that, let's say a friend reaches out to you, it's easy to kind of just say, no, don't feel that way, you know, don't do that, it's a sin, you know, you kind of have those immediate jerk reactions. But sometimes you just need to listen, and you just need to have an open ear and an open heart, and you listen to them, because people always show warning signs, which is what we spoke about in the live. People always show warning signs beforehand, but sometimes we miss them, right? And so I think the biggest thing is, if you are feeling that way, please reach out to someone, because then you could go, or both of you together, if you're feeling nervous about it, could go to the professional or figure out what resources are together. And then if you are the person that has someone close to you who express that, be a listening ear, listen to them. Let's figure out how we could get you the help and the support that you need.
Absolutely. And then you could, like, if you're not sure about how to get access to that hotline, if you have access to the internet, you could Google mental health hotline, suicide hotline in wherever you are, in the Bahamas, in this state, in Antigua, wherever you are, and you should find a 24-hour hotline usually that you could call immediately if you feel like you can't trust that person with that. They might just invalidate your emotions, or if you just feel more comfortable doing that.
Thank you both so much for that. So as both Marissa and Emma said, if you are experiencing suicidal thoughts, you can feel free to reach out to someone or find a suicide hotline. And if you know someone who may have reached out to you about suicidal thoughts, just be a listening ear and be willing to help them to get the support that they need. Thank you both for that. I know it's like a difficult conversation to have, honestly, talking about suicide, but it's so important. And recently, at the beginning of this year, one of the beauty queens, Miss USA, she passed away from suicide. And her mom mentioned that she had actually had high functioning depression. And as we mentioned earlier, as young adults, there's a lot of pressure on us. And we always feel like we have to be doing something for us to be successful. And we just always have to be on, you know? And my next question is, what exactly is high functioning depression, and what are some signs that we may miss in terms of seeing someone who may be suffering from depression and they're going regular, like you just wouldn't notice.
Right. So, similar to what we had mentioned before, people experience depression at different levels, or less, they have different levels of severity, right? I know with high functioning depression, sometimes what we would call it is persistent depressive disorder, right? And diagnostically, it's something that's going on. Those common symptoms of depression: the low mood, the loss of appetite, the isolation, the suicidal thoughts, those things occur over a longer period of time, right? Like, so about, like, I think 2 years, over the 2 year period of time, compared to major depressive disorder, what most people refer to when they speak of depression, which those symptoms kind of occur about over a period of 2 weeks, and it kind of comes and goes. It's the episodic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when persons are high functioning, I know a lot of times people may assume, because I can't see it, maybe it's like a milder form of depression, or it's not as bad. And that's not the case. High functioning depression is still depression, and there's still an impairment there. And when I say impairment, it's all about how you're able to function in your environment. Persons who tend to be high functioning are persons who are perfectionists and persons who have a lot of anxiety, right? They're high achievers, right? They want the best of the best, all about that. I want to come off like this. I want to do things like this. And when you look at perfectionism and things like that, it comes with a lot of pessimistic views about yourself, about your work, about the things that you do. And so they tend to have what we would call the critical inner voice, right? So anything you do, essentially, you're picking yourself apart, right? And maybe this might have been a situation where in your childhood, someone had that type of, I guess, interaction with you, where they criticized a lot of things that you did. And over a period of time, you kind of internalize that. So now you're the one who kind of is carrying on that, that tendency to really pick and to be negative and look about yourself. And I think that's what makes high functioning depression so challenging. Because if on the outside, my hair is slayed, I got the best outfits, I'm killing it on Instagram, killing it in my profession. Yes, like Emma said, I'm making it rain. I secure in the bag. That means to the outface in public, I am doing it. I'm that girl. But at home by myself, I'm picking myself apart, and I don't have anyone that I feel like I could even go to, because people are like, what? You feel that way? That's you? And I think that's the most challenging thing, because, you're dealing with self-doubt, you're dealing with increased irritation, you're on maybe even some isolation and things like that, and you're doing it by yourself, right? And that cocktail of feelings and emotions is not a healthy one, right? Because like I said, persons who have suicidal thoughts, they're not thinking rationally, right? They might not feel like they have the support that is available to them. And it's interesting because I cannot remember her name, but the beauty queen.
Yeah, Chesley.
I was on TikTok. What's it?
Chesley.
Yes. Well, I was on TikTok, and that was the first time that I saw her. It was after her passing. That was the first time that I saw her appear on my For You page. And I would have never guessed. I would have never guessed. And it almost felt eerie, like to see it in that moment and to know what happened, And I think it's like, I know people always say check on your strong friends when we talk about like your mental health. And I think mental health doesn't have a look. I think that's the thing that you really could take away from high functioning depression. It doesn't have a look. People deal with things in different ways. And it's really important to have that space to really talk to people, because if you're dealing with it by yourself, you're going to think it's normal, or you're going to think this is natural, or this is the way it's supposed to be. Because sometimes we talk to ourselves in ways we'd never talk to a friend, we'd never talk to a loved one, so it's important that you kind of vocalize and you fact check some of the stuff that you tell yourself, because depression is a beast. It's a very isolating experience once that that sadness gets on you. And I think don't doubt the strength that comes from having a support system and from having that ability to really talk to someone, whether it be a friend or whether it be a professional like Emma and myself.
Absolutely.
Emma, you want to add something?
No, I think Marissa like covered that very beautifully as well. And I think that sometimes it can be so easy, even when we have the best intentions, right? It can be so easy to invalidate people in their emotions. For example, someone with, this experience, and you might find yourself saying, but you have this, you have that, you have so much to look forward to. And it's so tempting to do that, but that can make people feel even worse. They already know that they have all of these things. So chances are that can make them feel like, well, why do I even feel this way? Oh my God, there's really something wrong with me. I don't understand it and feel ungrateful, but it's not them being ungrateful in any way. It's them also saying that this is really hard for me. And I think, just like we said before, it can be so tempting to just jump in, but just listening can be so powerful. Listening and saying, wow, that's a lot. That must be so hard. Because sometimes we haven't even heard that before. We've just been brushed aside with those things, and it's harder to, I guess, reduce the intensity of our emotions when we're not accepting them. We're not saying what they are. When someone else is telling us, or when we're telling ourselves, this is not that bad, or I shouldn't be feeling that way. It makes you feel it for longer and it makes you feel it more intensely. So I think that's definitely something that's absolutely important. And not just with people you think who are having mental health challenges, just in general. Yeah. Because you don't know. You don't know. Like Marissa said, there's no face for a mental health challenge. And people without disorders, like Marissa would have mentioned, do experience mental health challenges. We all do. Think of mental health as a continuum. Everybody has mental health, so that everybody can have the potential for their mental health declining. And it's important to accept that and recognize it.
And someone is saying this live resonates so deep. Just experienced that this week past.
Wow. Thank you for that person who bravely shared that. Thank you so much. You are definitely not alone in your experience. And like I said before, that sounds really challenging. And it is a lot. If you haven't said it to yourself, it's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot to deal with.
And one thing, Marissa, that you mentioned, how we always say check on our strong friends. But as you both said, it has no face. So we should just be checking on all of our friends.
Everybody.
Check on all your friends, not just strong friends. Check on everyone. You just genuinely, you may never know what someone may be going through privately that they never really actually mentioned to you. And I think that's just so important. Check on all your friends.
Yeah.
And another question that came in when I posted the questions on my Instagram story, someone asked, what are some simple ways to manage persistent negative thoughts?
Okay. Can I get that one? Or you? Okay. So one therapeutic orientation, so a type of therapy, right, that really looks at this a lot is cognitive behavioral therapy. This is one that's talked about the most, so CBT, and it teaches that your thoughts actually influence your emotions and your behavior, and vice versa. So it's kind of like a triangle where your thoughts are here, your behavior's there, your emotions there, and they're all systematically influencing each other, right? So there's this 3-step tool that CBT teaches to either reduce or eliminate a negative thought, right? So the first thing is recognizing the thought. We have to identify it if we want to know how do we manage this, and we have to acknowledge it. You have to accept that it's there instead of trying to push it down. So acknowledge to yourself that it's even there. Just because we have this thought, it does not affect our worth, and I know that's so difficult to accept. You even say to yourself in the moment when you're in the thick of it. So notice what exactly you're thinking. Try to break it down. So after not getting full marks on a review, for example, someone might be thinking, I'm a failure. I never do anything right. See, I knew it all along. I'm never going to be successful. And just recognizing that is the first step. Then the second thing, the second thing you want to say or do is challenge the thought, right? So you've acknowledged the thought already. And what you want to do is pause again and recognize if there's any evidence that supports this thought. So is there any evidence that I'm actually a failure? And then what you want to do is look at, is there any evidence that does not support this thought? So, okay, I'm saying to myself, I am a failure. But I made it through middle school. I made it through high school. Okay, I got fired from my job, but I got the job to begin with. I was actually able to do that. I'm able to do this and that. And chances are you will find there's so much evidence that does not support that. And you want to notice the disparity in how you feel when you talk about that thought that you had in the beginning, that persistent negative thought, like, I'm a failure. Chances are you're not going to feel great after thinking that. You might feel sad. You might feel disappointed. You might feel just horrible, right? And so what you might do is notice, like I said, in the past, I've been able to achieve similar things when I applied myself, right? And this can help you to clarify whether you're really a failure, like you're thinking in this moment, or if you just didn't get 100% on the task like you would have wanted. And, recognizing that that's actually uncomfortable for me. I don't like that. I don't like when I don't achieve something in the way that I would like to. And then the third thing you want to do is replace the negative thought with a realistic one. So you don't want to just switch it entirely. So I will always do everything 100% well. That's not going to resonate with you at all because it's unrealistic and your mind's going to reject that. Like that is not even making sense to me. So it's a no, and you're likely going to continue feeling how you were feeling all along. So you want to make it realistic. Okay, so you might want to say to yourself, okay, I didn't do as well as I wanted to, as opposed to I'm a failure. Or, oh, the dog want to enter the live too.
Yes, continue.
So yeah, that relationship hurt so much. It's not that I'm unlovable. I just feel really hurt right now in this moment. That really impacted me. I really love this person a lot. Or like I knew it was a healthier thing to leave, but it hurts a lot. So it's just flipping it to more realistic, because we have 1,000,002 automatic thoughts going on, and we don't even realize that they're automatic anymore, because it's just like, oh, this just happened. It's like breathing sometimes. And it's something that Marissa mentioned before. Like, it could help to acknowledge that these thoughts weren't always yours. So yeah, people may be more genetically predisposed to having a lower mood, just because it's like maybe in their family history and based on their temperament as a baby as well. But we weren't born thinking that we're stupid, or that things will never go right in our lives, or that we're failures, and so on. So becoming curious about where that voice came from. So like, when did you first hear that? Or when did you start saying it? Or where else have you heard those phrases? Can help you to see that as much as I feel like this is true right now, this was never mine to begin with. So,
wow. I love the practicality with that in terms of the tips. And before I go into it, if you have any questions for Marissa or Emma, please feel free to use our question tab as we wind down. You can ask whatever question it is that you have either in the question tab or in the comment section, and Marissa and Emma will be happy to answer your questions. So Emma, I loved how you just broke that down into 3 easy steps. Firstly, acknowledging that you have the thought, and then challenging the thought, and then finally replacing the thought with something realistic. And I love how you mentioned realistic and not something that's like, yeah, you ain't gonna believe this. Like, you have to say something that yes, yourself will actually believe and take on. And I just think that is so helpful, because a lot of times we tend to have negative thoughts and we don't know exactly what to do with it. And there are also times when people say to, recite words of affirmation, just, to continuously reinforce positivity within yourself. And I think utilizing the 3 tips that you mentioned is just going to help us in terms of knowing how exactly we should face dealing with these constant negative thoughts. So thank you so much for those tips. And now to the final question that I have. So again, if you have a question for Emma and Marissa, please feel free to ask your question at this time. We have 2 professional psychologists who are happy to answer your questions. So don't miss out on this opportunity to get your questions answered. So finally, obviously we know the importance of going to therapy, right? But obviously as young adults, we have a lot of things to juggle. We have bills, etc. And we may not always be in the right financial position to actually pay for therapy. And I just want to know, what are some, I want to say, cheap or some things that we can do that we don't have to pay for if we're not fully ready for therapy yet, or if we can't afford therapy? What are some things that we can do now to ensure that we are checking on our mental health, taking care of ourselves, noticing when our mood is declining, and being able to just snap out of it and just take care of ourselves?
Okay, so I think the first thing, because this is actually what our most recent episode is about. We just did an episode on what's really holding me back from starting therapy, where we touch on, real things that impact that just impacts your ability to start that journey with therapy, and real valid things as well. Because, money is a big one, and one that we touch on. And what we touch on in the episode as well is that even though money is a factor, sometimes there are mechanisms where you can get therapy subsidized, or you could get mental health resources for free, right? And it's all about tapping into your psych associations, tapping into mental health advocacy groups, things like that, to get a sense of what mental health options are available at a subsidized rate, at a free rate, or within your budget, right? So I think therapy is expensive, right? It is. And it's like you said, we're just not there yet all the time. We're still working our way up, establishing ourselves, and sometimes it can feel out of reach. But it's also important to do your research and see what is available to you, so you also have a sense of, well, what could I potentially work towards? It's like you said, you're working your way towards it, but what is it? So figure out what is available to you and think through, well, okay, I know I want to take this on, the budget and things like that, in 3 months. 3 months, I may be able to, finesse a payment to have a therapist, because now I did my research and I know what's there. In terms of other tools, in the meantime, between time, we actually put together a resource, like PDF file, where we actually provide, is it about 5? I think it's about 5 resources. Yeah, 5 tools that you could utilize to kind of help you process the emotions, figure out how you feel, be curious, and get you in that state where you're healthy, and get you in that state where you're thinking about, well, what do I need to do to maintain my mental health? And we also have a resource where it gives you certain questions that you need to ask, in preparing for this journey. A lot of times people don't even know the first place to go when it comes to looking for a therapist, right? And so things like some of what we mentioned here today, being curious, talking to a friend, journaling. And listen, I know Emma and I know our clients are never here for journaling, but journaling, sometimes it makes all the difference, when, like I said, when that cup is full and you just need a way to empty it, and you might not have that support system, or you might not have that person to talk to. Sometimes journaling, holy grail, chef's kiss, right? Being able to just write down those emotions, get it out of you. It doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to be eloquent. You just put down how you feel, be questioning, why am I feeling like this? Some of the stuff that Emma brought up, looking at your thoughts. Am I overgeneralizing? Why am I overgeneralizing? Who spoke to me this way in the past? Why am I speaking to this way now? Those are all the things that you could do with an empty pen and paper. Or for some people who like the notes app, they could use that as well. And also mindfulness. I know people hear this all the time. Mindfulness is an excellent tool. The affirmations that you mentioned before, trying to speak to yourself, like starting to speak to yourself in a certain way to start off the day. That having a morning routine, having a nighttime routine. A lot of people don't know, that blue light on your phone, it impacts on your sleep, right? As much as we love to be scrolling through Instagram and TikTok before bed, that is not necessarily the best for us. And so I think definitely check out those tips that Emma and I put together, because we really sit down and thought through, yes, we want people to go to therapy. Yes, we want to give them a guide on how to get to therapy. But the reality is not everyone is in the space to actually access therapy and to benefit from therapy. And so we really sat down and thought through some prompts for that journaling that I spoke about, and things that you could do on your own. Because even when you look at therapy itself, it doesn't just happen in the therapy room. It's certain things that you have to take home and put into practice, and you do your homework and things like that. So even when you start the therapy journey, whenever that comes, having those kind of tools that Emma and I shared already going is going to make all the difference.
Thank you both so much. Emma, do you want to add anything to what Marissa just said?
I would just say, for the people who are like, yo, I just can't, I'm not going to be writing in the journal, I'm not going to do it. One thing that you can do is you could set up your phone or whatever camera device, laptop, whatever you have, and you could just talk about it.
Yeah.
And you could use the same prompts. We have, like Marissa said, we have the prompts there just to get you started. There are some other prompts online that you could find easily just with a quick Google search. But we have that there in case you don't know where to start. What else would I say? Yeah, the tools we made them free so everyone could access them. And we're going to keep putting more out there. There are 3 tools up there right now. And I dropped the link in the live for all of you who want to look at it, who want to share it. Share it, please. Sharing is caring, especially in this, thing we're talking about right now. So yeah, that's what I would say.
I love the fact that you both mentioned journaling and mindfulness. And I think another thing that is very underrated is having a routine. I don't have a morning routine. I have a nighttime routine. Like, it is what it is, And it's like we really underestimate the value of having these routines, because they, like, for example, a morning routine, it sets your vibe for the rest of the day. And
exactly.
You're just up and just in a rush the entire time. Like, you don't have any time to just slow down and just take it all in. So that is definitely something that I really thought mattered more. So like the routines, I think that is super helpful. And again, that's something that I will want to implement
I think sorry, go ahead. I think that if it's anything that we've talked about or learned in this live, or anything that you take away, please take away the fact that for something to work, it does not have to be complex.
Yeah.
It could have 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. A morning routine doesn't have to be a 17-item checklist of what you want to do. For me personally, that would overwhelm me. It's too much. It could literally be as simple as, okay, morning routine. I want to open the window, get some fresh air in. Or first, I'm turning my alarm clock off. Or I have no alarm today. Then I'm just getting up, taking a moment to slowly get myself up out of bed. Let me go brush my teeth to wake myself up, shower, get started. I mean, please eat.
That's a big one.
You take care of that too. Yeah. But it doesn't have to be so complex. It could be the night routine. Okay, for me to feel comfortable, I need a shower in some cooler water. I need to make sure the fan is set at a good temperature so I'm not so hot, so I'm not waking up in the middle of the night because of that. If you have a diffuser and that's what you like, You could turn that on. You could set some like slow music, even like an hour before, like kind of priming your brain. And if this is not something that you think would work for you, or that you have tried and hasn't worked for you, remember, you are at the center of it. So something that works for someone else might not work for you, and it's not that there's something wrong with you. It's just that you're different. We're all different. We have different needs. We have different wants. We have different goals. And so our routines as well should not only be flexible, because we're not going to follow them all the time, but they should be created with us in mind.
Yeah. And to add to that, Emma, I just want to like, that's a very big point, right? Because we are bombarded on social media all the time on what certain things should look like, what certain aspects of our time should look like. And even though it might not be explicitly said, it leads to certain expectations. No one is telling you to wake up at 5 a.m. to have a good morning routine if you in your heart of hearts know that you don't come out of bed until 11 and that you work better in the afternoon. No one is pushing you to wake up at 5 a.m. and it's setting these unrealistic expectations. It kind of sets ourselves up, you know, to kind of have that negative self-talk. And so that flexibility and putting yourself at the center and recognizing what works for you is very key. Those two go hand in hand, and it makes all the difference when you're trying these things and you want to make it work. A lot of times we just want to click, copy, paste, apply it to our life, and that's not the way it is. You know, we're very nuanced. We have our own preferences, our own desires, and things of that nature. And so just like that, any of the tips and the suggestions that we made, you know, like how Emma provided that suggestion with the video. Not all of us are like persons who work well with words. You know, sometimes you have to hear it, sometimes you have to see it. So don't always look at your preference as something that's wrong with you or something that needs to be fixed or changed and it needs to look like this. But think about, okay, well, how could I just meet my needs? How could I meet myself where I'm at to make sure that it's more likely that I stick to this routine, right? Because that's a part of self-love, that discipline. It's a part of the self-love. It's a part of the self-care. And so definitely don't underestimate that.
And I think one thing that really comes to mind as you were just speaking is not to compare ourselves, because lots of times we compare ourselves on the journey. That tends to bring us down because, oh, well, I only have a 2-point plan, whereas this girl has like 10 things that she does with her morning routine, especially with social media. It always has you questioning yourself, like, am I doing something wrong? Because I don't have enough time in my day to do all these things. And one thing that you guys are both saying in terms of being flexible is like, don't be so hard on yourself, you know, and not to compare ourselves and our journey to someone else's. So thank you both for that. And as both Marissa and Emma mentioned, they have provided an actual tool for you to look at if you want to find useful ways for you to take care of your mental health if you may not be fully ready for therapy yet. There are tools that they have provided. Emma has put the link in the comment section, and you can also go to their page, Adulthood Podcast, to access that tool. And I also have a words of affirmation free tool that I have on my website, sharsmind.com. So please feel free to use these tools to help you on your journey to taking care of your mental health. And as you were speaking, I saw one question come through.
Okay.
And from Alvin, and he said, are there any physical signs that you may notice in friends or family that may be battling mental health issues or anything they may say?
I'm sorry, I think it broke up a bit for me. You said physical signs?
Yes, physical signs that you may notice in friends or family that may be battling mental health issues or any specific things that they may say.
Yeah. So what's interesting, when you look at mental health in the Caribbean, because of the stigma, the way that people talk about their mental health is going to look very different from how we'd expect to see it, like because we're exposed to a lot of American shows and things like that, right? No one on the street is going to come out and say, you know, boy, I'm feeling real depressed today, or my anxiety levels are up to here. You know, we don't speak about our mental health challenges that way. And so I appreciate that Alvin asked about the physical stuff, because that's really the key. A lot of times, especially in the mental health field, we get referrals from general practitioners. Persons come in, I've had an upset stomach, and they run the test, they try to figure out what's going on. They can't find anything. They refer them to a psychologist, because that's how sometimes anxiety could manifest, you know. People talk about their belly breaking down, right? If they find out that someone's cheating on them, or, you know, something didn't go their way, or they're concerned about something. Yes, your belly may be breaking down, but that's also anxiety there too, right? And when you look at sleep, boy, I be up late at night. Let's see if you have a friend who's sending you TikToks at the crack of dawn, or even earlier, let's say 2, 3 a.m. Every night you're waking up to TikTok links or like funny memes. You was up a little late. What was happening there? You know, why aren't you sleeping? You know, it's little things like that. I'm trying to think of what else. What else are the common ones, Emma?
So a lot of times too, like Marissa said, so especially in the Caribbean, we tend to manifest the physical symptoms of mental health challenges far often than the cognitive symptoms and so on. So something that even I recognize when I feel like, oh my God, I have a headache.
Yeah.
It's for so long, or like certain joints, backaches, these type of things, and you just thinking, let me just take a Tylenol or Panadol, whatever, go about my business. But pain and these type of physical symptoms, they're signals. They're like, okay, you didn't realize that it was difficult for you to concentrate, or that you were feeling this way, but now I'm gonna just show you that you're feeling something is going on. So when you just feel that fatigue and you feel like I can't do anything. Oh my God, just showering is a task. Like, why do I have to brush my teeth every day? Like, I'm gonna do it, but like, gosh, it's just so tiring. I have to fix my hair. I have to get dressed. And I know in the pandemic, you know, for us having to be at home for such a long period, and like it was even more before, it was so easy to just okay, let me just get up. I'm in the same clothes for a while, and like 5 o'clock, maybe I'll shower, put on some more pajamas again, and that's my routine. Without like physically saying this is my routine, that ends up being it. But it's really important to look at, you know, your hygiene, your practices. Like, what type of hygiene practices changed? Like, is it harder for you to maintain your hygiene? Is this person, your friend or your family member, looking a bit more disheveled than usual? Those can be some really powerful indicators that maybe sometimes we just normalize. We just didn't know that they were a sign. Yeah, so like I mentioned, any type of like pain in your body, any type of tension. Sometimes we don't realize that we have our muscles so tensed up
and clenched,
that locked jaw, and so we're like, oh my God,
the teeth grinding too. Sometimes
in your sleep.
Complain about like teeth grinding, and they notice it like in the morning, and they don't think about, well, what has your jaw so clenched? You know, that's that tension that you kind of holding in your body. Oh, that just remind me another good one with caught me slipping. You know, that neck pain
right here,
yes, that could get you too. You know, because that's where sometimes we hold a lot of stress there and we don't even realize it. So for me, especially because I've been working remotely since the onset of the pandemic, I'm always in an office chair in front of a monitor. And one time, I woke up one morning and around here was, it just was hurting me. And I realized once I really felt that, I was like, boy, Marissa, you know, you need a vacation. That's all I'm telling you. Because once I Googled what causes this pain, stress. That was the first thing that came up. And so our body tells us, but sometimes we tend to ignore it. And this is something that we even spoke on the episode. You know, we feel like we could kind of, I don't know, something in the Caribbean, we feel a little pain. Oh, that's tea. I could take vitamins or something for it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We just so used to kind of ignoring it, you know. And yes, or someone says heart palpitations. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sometimes it feels like your heart getting ready to pop out of its chest, and we feel like we don't take the time. Like, we feel it and we're used to it, but I don't think the signal isn't as strong for us as it should be, because we're so used to just pushing past it and saying, I don't need to pay attention, but we do need to pay attention because that's our body telling us. And mental health and physical health is intertwined.
I think some other ones that I'd say is like the pacing. Sometimes that can be like a sign of like anxiety. You're just dealing with something and you're trying to, or it's just like stressing you out or whatever it is. It's just on your mind and you're thinking about it and it's coming into like circular thinking. So now you're having that thought over and over and over and over and over. And that could bring on a headache too. Like sometimes there can be like changes in weight or your appetite. And this is not the moment for you to say, oh, you drop a lot of weight, eh? Or, oh, you gain a lot of weight. When you going back to the gym, come with me. This is not the time. This is also not the time to say, wow, you're eating a lot of food. And there's never a time for that.
Yeah. Like, let's just not that up.
It can be very insensitive. So even when we say to someone, wow, you've lost so much weight, you look so good. That can be triggering. Imagine someone who's recovering from an eating disorder. That can be very triggering without us even knowing. So it's just really important for us to be sensitive about the things we say. And I know it's so easy to say, the world has become so hypersensitive now. And in some ways, I can see how that's true. But there's other ways where, no, now we just have more information about unhealthy practices and healthy practices and things that have been affecting people. But people have just been swallowing it because they didn't feel like they could say something or they didn't know that this was out of the norm. So when we're geared with all of this knowledge, it's just very beneficial for us to be sensitive when we interact with others, because, you know, a lot of communication is not even verbal, it's non-verbal. So I'm really glad that person talked about like the physical symptoms. So even like your posture, it seems like it's such a small thing, but just think about it. If someone's like standing like this and they're smiling versus someone who's like their shoulders are slumped over, not making eye contact, and you know, that can be a sign that maybe they're having a hard time. But please don't just say like, this is a sign that you are depressed. That can be different things. People who have autism sometimes may struggle to maintain eye contact and struggle with just like nonverbal cues and nonverbal behaviors. We look at things within context. Yes, we're giving you the signs, but we look at things within the context of, you know, your whole background information, your culture. If we're doing an evaluation, we look at how you scored on the tests and what your strengths and challenges are that we gather based on those tests, as opposed to what is wrong with you. Because how you're presenting or how you're experiencing things in terms of mental health problems, like I said before, it's more an indicator, or like it just makes sense based on what you've experienced.
Yeah.
There's something being wrong with you. So, yeah.
Wow, thank you for that. And I think a lot of those things that you all mentioned, we always tend to ignore them. The headaches, the back pain, all those little things, we don't know that this may actually be a sign. So the fact that you guys mentioned that is definitely something that we should take with us and recognize in ourselves and in people around us if we are noticing that there may be a little something that may be indicating that they may be struggling with something. And Alvin said in the chat, we need to stop saying those things to people without knowing what they're going through. Because, you know, in the Caribbean community, you're greeted by your older family members by saying, girl, you put on weight, eh?
Yes.
And it's like...
the holidays.
Like, that's like the most annoying greeting ever. But I guess that's just a thing in the Caribbean, and people just they don't really think about the impact that one little comment can have on someone, you know. So I totally agree that we need to be careful with what we say before we say things, because we don't know what people may be struggling with. And as Emma and Marissa have mentioned before, and throughout our life, they have been dropping links to various podcast episodes, as well as links to the free resources that they have so graciously provided. So I just want you guys to, at the end of this live, follow the Adulthood Loading podcast, like their lives, listen to their podcast, and just support because they are providing you with free content. And obviously, what we do in terms of doing these lives, doing podcasts, it's free. But we would appreciate your support by liking, commenting, sharing with a friend, showing us that you truly care so that we can be motivated to continue providing you with useful content. So, Emma and Marissa, I just want to say thank you both so much, not just for only coming on to my live, but having your own platform with the Adulthood Loading podcast, where you're providing young people with tips and tools to navigate adulthood. Trust me, your work does not go unnoticed, and it is truly needed today. So I just want to say thank you both so much. And I know that our audience has gained so much from what you both have said today. You've provided so many useful tools that we can now take on and implement. And this week, I hope that everyone tries to come up with their morning and routine so that we can, start on our journey to taking care of our mental health. So without further ado, I just want to say thank you again, and I hope that everyone has an amazing rest of their evening.
Thank you so much.
All right, bye.
Bye. Take care.
Okay.